Earlier on in the series, we took a look at the while loop, and now we're going to take a look at the for loop. And the for loop is going to be similar to the while loop in that it's going to keep repeating itself until a certain condition is no longer met. Now, the difference between the for loop and the while loop is the for loop's going to take three pieces of information that the while loop scattered all over the fucking place, and it's going to neatly sort it inside of its brackets. So it's actually going to be a little bit better. We'll start out by looking at the while loop to see these three pieces of information, and then we're going to translate it over to a for loop. So we'll write the keyword while, and we put our condition inside the bracket. So I can say that x is less than 5. I want this loop to keep repeating itself until x is no longer less than 5. Well, already we have a problem because we don't know if x is an integer or a double or whatever it is. So we need to go ahead up here and write that x is an integer. We also need to assign it a starting value. So we see we already have information all over the place, right? We have our x variable up here. We're saying that it's starting at 0 and it's an integer. We have our condition in here, and then we have to go inside of the body and we have to put a increment, right? X++, to mean that every time we see this piece of code inside of the body, you're going to increase the value of x by 1. So the first time you pass through, it starts off at 0, and then this increases it to 1, then increases it to 2, 3, 4, and then once it gets to 5, it can no longer pass through the loop because that will not satisfy the condition, and then you'll stop using this while loop. So if I went and put a print condition over here, or a print statement, I can just put the variable x, right, to see exactly how this loop is working. I go ahead and run this, and we see we get 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's the loop, right? 0 to 4, and we can't go any higher because that would not satisfy the condition. Well, that's great, but how can we take all of this information and make it neatly inside of the brackets of a for loop? So we have this initial value over here, we have our condition, and we have our increment. So we're going to take all those three pieces of information and design this exact same loop in a for loop. So go ahead and delete all this. You can probably guess that the keyword for the for loop is going to be the word then. I'm kidding, it's going to be for. Of course it's for. We're not going to confuse you guys any more than that. So the keyword for over here, I'm going to go ahead and the first thing I'm going to put inside is going to be the initial value that I want to start with. Now, if I have not mentioned that the variable that I'm going to be using here is a integer or a double, if I've not mentioned in my program what it is, you can enter it right here. So I can go say that the variable x is going to be an integer, and I can assign that a value of 0 to start off with. So this is going to be the starting value. You could also obviously do like the while loop and write that x is an integer somewhere else before this for loop. However, if this is the first time mentioning x, you can just go ahead and put it inside here. You're going to put a semicolon to separate, make a little bit of space here. The next thing you're going to put is going to be your condition. So we know we want to make the exact same loop that we did with the while loop. So I can go ahead and write x is less than 5. I want this loop to keep repeating itself until x is no longer less than 5. And then you put another semicolon, and now you're going to put your increment. So in this case, x++. I want this to increase by 1 each time it passes through the loop. So that is going to be our for loop. We have those three pieces of information that the while loop scattered all over the place. They're all neatly sorted inside of the brackets over here. It's pretty awesome. I can go ahead and write the print output right here, system out print line, and I put the variable x like that. And you can see that when I go ahead and run this, we're going to get the exact same thing as the while loop. Sorry, I had a little burp there. So exact same thing as the while loop over here, 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. So that's how a for loop works. It takes the information that the while loop scattered all over the place and it puts it neatly inside of the brackets over here. If you have any questions about for loops or while loops or anything we've seen so far in this series, feel free to leave them in the comments below. I'll respond to you as soon as possible. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.